welcome back to the realm of history. Oh, that new song is my jam right there. I'm hoping that we can get some questions answered for you tonight. Get ready for the quiz for tomorrow. Looking forward to answering any questions that you have and going through some of the really important ideas that I want to get to you in preparation for that quiz. And of course, both the content and the AP portions. Let's get right into it here with a little look at the agenda for tonight. Of course, we're going to start with a little bit of my key advice here at the beginning on how to prepare for this upcoming quiz. We'll talk about some of the selected key terms, figures, places that are on your review sheet. I will go over quite a few of the short answer possibilities in depth. We'll do a little AP preparation and some advice there, and then we'll get into our question and answer session and a little bit of final advice from me before we close it out. So first off, let's get into the key advice. For this quiz, it's been quite a bit of time since you've taken a quiz. You've been, after the midterm, you've had a little bit of a break. So I want to get you back into the mindset of being here now, making sure that we're focusing, of course, on the task at hand and getting our study process done to the best of our ability. Number one thing, my key advice, as always, making sure that you're reading your notes carefully. The whole reason why we do the outlines is for times like this. This is when we really need to get ourselves ready for the quiz. And that's the best way to do it, is to read those notes. That's where I'm giving you all of the key ideas that I really want you to know for this chapter. Second, I really think it's to your advantage to utilize your review sheet. I would quiz yourself off of your review sheet. Those terms are really the key to your success. What's on the review sheet drives what's on the assessment on this quiz. So I think that's really important to remember. Number three, I know I say this every single live review, but pray for the right things. Remember, don't ask the good Lord for an A on this test or even to do well. Pray for the right things. Pray for the health of yourself and your family, for your friends, for your colleagues, for your teammates, making sure that you're keeping your priorities straight and understanding that you want to thank the good Lord for all of the great blessings that have been bestowed upon you and the talents that you are blessed with as well. And it's your job to use those things to the fullest. And then I think saying the prayer of gratitude, just saying thank you for everything throughout your day is, I think, just a great way to get closer to the good Lord. Now, my final piece of key advice is to make sure that you say thank you to your parents. Make sure that you do that tonight. They do so much for you. And I think it's just a really pleasant thing before you go to bed tonight, just to give your parents a big thank you and express your gratitude to them. Okay, now that we're through the key advice, let's jump into a series of key terms that I really want to go over with you. What I do is usually I chart, on review day, what are some of the key questions? And then from my mind, where are some areas that I think we might have struggled with our notes and going through that process. So let's start with movable type. Okay, movable type, what you really want to understand, it's an element of both Chinese block printing, but it's also a pretty big element of course, the printing press. So all it really is, movable type, once again, all it really is just these small letters either made of wood or metal that you can arrange on a slate, which creates a template. So movable type is just really another way of saying the small letters that you could put ink on as like a stamp in this printing process. And the Chinese invent it. Johann Gutenberg advances it with the use of the printing press in the mid 1400s. Okay, moving our way on down the list. I think it's pretty easy now. The printing press is basically a device or a machine developed by Johann Gutenberg to massively reproduce books. And when those books are in reproduction, the way that they were mass produced is replacing monks in monasteries who are writing every last word of every last book down. So, it made books more abundant, and the more of something that you have, it's all supply and demand economically. It means that the price of said books are going to go down, which means that more and more people can afford to buy those books. And so then more and more people will have an incentive to learn how to read. So if you looked at the Renaissance, if you looked at the Middle Ages, most people were illiterate, but the printing press starts to change that ideology. It starts to advance ideas, cultural diffusion continues to advance. And of course, you see an influx of people getting educated and being able to read. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll get into some of those different ideologies related to the Renaissance and Reformation, starting with Presbyterians. Presbyterian is a denomination, a Protestant denomination that began by John Knox, and in particular, it starts in Scotland. Okay, so it's very similar to Calvinism, very strict moral and ethical codes, but really developing in the region of Scotland. Okay, the next term is predestination. When you take a look at predestination, one of the key things that you really want to make sure that you are looking into here with predestination is that it's this idea put in play by Calvinists or by their leader John Calvin, who's the founder of Calvinism. It's this idea that only a certain amount of people are going to be selected to go to heaven. And God has this already planned out. There's nothing that you can really do about it, no matter really what you do on earth. It's already under God's plan. And so, but the idea is that only very few people are known as the elect will go into heaven. And so that's one of the key themes of Calvinism. That's why they had this very strict moral code. They wanted people to be acting properly, possibly that they could be part of the elect. Okay. Next is a religious order of the Catholic Church called the Jesuits. The Jesuits were founded by Ignatius of Loyola. There were three factors that you want to know about the Jesuits, but I'm going to focus on one. The Jesuits, their most important theme that you'll need to know for this quiz is their predication on education. They really put a focus on educating the youth and others with creating schools. Even today, many schools are named a Jesuit school, like University of Detroit Jesuit. They're in the Catholic League. They follow the Jesuit format, the Jesuit principles of education. That's the key idea there. Okay, moving my way down the list, I want to go to another Protestant denomination that we talked about with some of the classes today, Anabaptists. One of the interesting things about Anabaptists is that they believed in baptism, but only for adults, meaning they didn't really believe in baptizing a baby that couldn't make that decision on their own. So what I said in class today to a couple of the classes, I don't think we made it to it in all of the classes, but I said it's really similar to the Catholic practice of confirmation, right? It's very similar to the Catholic practice of confirmation, where you then affirm that you believe in your faith. Next is the Peace of Augsburg. Okay, the Peace of Augsburg ended a major war between Protestants and Catholics in Germany. Germany is where Martin Luther was from, and toward the end of Martin Luther's life, a war broke out because, as I taught you, Germany was also known as the Holy Roman Empire. So it was made up of many different states, and each state was, in essence, ruled by a king or a queen. But the king or the queen was really called a prince at this time. So there was a Holy Roman Emperor, which kind of oversaw all of these different entities. That was Charles V. And then each of these smaller countries / states had a prince or a princess, which kind of served as the smaller monarch or king or queen. So those princes were going to war against each other. If there were some that were Catholic, and then there were some that were Protestant, they were fighting over territory in which they could practice their religious faith freely. The Peace of Augsburg ends that war by allowing each individual prince to make the decision on what religion would be practiced in their own territorial land. So that's what the Peace of Augsburg was, and that's really the effect that it had. Next, continuing on this line of the Protestant Reformation, is the Act of Supremacy. Eventually, the Protestant Reformation makes it to England. And when it gets to England, Henry VIII, who was seeking to have a male heir to the throne, he has only daughters. He needs to have a son. Remember, he wants to divorce his first wife, who was named Catherine from Aragon. That means she's from a part of Spain called Aragon. He believes that she's too old to have a child. So he wants to divorce her and marry a younger queen who was actually his mistress, the very young Anne Boleyn. She was only in her 20s at this time. I believe Henry's in his late 40s, okay, if I'm not mistaken. He might have even been around 50. But nonetheless, the Act of Supremacy is that he wants to get a divorce. The Catholic Church will not allow him to get a divorce at this time. And so he separates from the Catholic Church entirely. He then claims that he is now the head of the Church of England, And he makes everyone in England swear this oath, which is called the Act of Supremacy, that he is the head of the church, not the Pope. Some people won't do it, like Thomas More, and those people were found guilty of treason, and most of them were beheaded in a fashion that we talked about today in class with the chopping block and the executioner and an axe. Okay, the last of the basic key terms that I'm going to go over here before we get into the short answer is going to be patrons. Remember, Renaissance art, that was really a big part of the Renaissance. Patrons are people who sponsored artists, okay? So if there was a burgeoning artist, somebody who's trying to get famous, trying to make money, and they get noticed by a king or a queen, or even just a wealthy merchant or a wealthy individual, those people would then buy their art, maybe give them a studio in their home or in a building that they might own, buy some of their supplies, and then maybe they would take a cut, like 5 or 3 or 7% of any profits that the artist might make off of that work. So patrons of the arts are really one of the big picture reasons why the Renaissance was a blossoming or a revival of artwork, because without people that wanted to buy the art, you really wouldn't have that revival of art and learning going on. It was the fact that people had money due to the new jobs that we talked about because of the end of the plague. The economy was going well for certain individuals, especially in the merchant class. And so that was one of the big reasons why art became popular. Okay, now I'll take a quick break from some of those things. I want to make sure that you will do me a favor in the comments. Just give me a quick hello so that I know who's here and who was attending. Also, I'm starting to learn about the YouTube algorithm. So if you could give me a like by hitting that thumbs up sign, I would really appreciate that. That might get my videos out there, helping more and more students, get me some more subscribers that I can help in the world of world history. I don't think I'm making it to 1,000 subscribers anytime soon. So I'm just, I think it's good to just help as many people as I can. Okay, let's take a look at some of the key short answer. You know that your review sheet was heavily inundated with a lot of short answer possibilities. So I'd like to talk about quite a few of those tonight. And then, of course, I'll get into the AP advice. And then after that, we'll go into a really good question and answer session. I want to be thorough answering all of your questions tonight. So please don't be afraid to ask a question. Okay, that's what this is all about. I just do the preliminary part to really kind of give you some formality to it, just to remind you some of the important ideologies there. Let's start with the Medici family, okay, and their position of power. What I'm looking for you to understand on this is that the Medici family started off owning a wool company. That's really a manufacturer of a form of clothing / blankets. Wool, is a very warm substance. So in northern Italy, it's kind of a popular theme. But with the money that they were making from that, okay, they invested it into loan sharking. So what a loan shark does is a person who has money, they loan it out to individuals who need money, and then they collect interest on that loan. So if they give somebody $100, in a month, that person owes them $120 back. The deal is with the Medici, if you didn't pay them back, that was a problem. That's where I told you they're really the first mafia, because they would send thugs out after you, rough you up, and get that money, or worse if they didn't get the money. So that's kind of like how they began with a mafia scheme there. Eventually, that loan sharking, which is pretty much the same thing that banks do, to be honest with you, they don't go sending thugs after you. They just, can maybe put a stamp on your credit line, or they could maybe usurp funds from your bank account. They could take away money from your paycheck. There's a lot of different things that if you fall in debt, that they can take action with. And some of those things, when you sign a contract, you should read the fine print there, because it'll tell you what they can and can't do. But nonetheless, I'm not one of those financial guys. So I'm just telling you that the Medici, they started to create banks throughout Europe and northern Italy and became one of the most powerful families because of that. They had influence in government in cities like Florence. They were really running the whole city. And they also had so much influence that they were able to get some of their family members into positions of power in the Catholic Church. Speaking of the church, some of the major criticism that the church faced prior to and also during the Reformation What your book mentions are those 4 categories, okay? The chart on page 488 is a very valuable source for you to really have an understanding of. That chart talks about economic, social, political, and religious factors. I'm going to focus on just a few things. Number 1, the Renaissance ideals of the individual and the role of the secular world really put a lot of difficulty on the church. Second, economically, there were certain people that did not want to pay taxes to the church anymore, especially the wealthy merchants. They kind of were sick of paying taxes to the church and tithes, and that was one of the major criticisms, is all of the money that they had to pay to the church. Then other critics, this is not me saying this, please make sure you understand, other critics would argue that, of course, there was corrupt leadership in the church. I just told you about the Medici family. So, if you're able to buy your way into those positions, then that could be problematic. And then also you had poorly educated priests, some of which were married, some had drinking problems, some had gambling problems. So these were some of the issues that critics were pointing at regarding the church during the 1400s, 1500s, so on and so forth. Martin Luther and his 3 main teachings. I promised you that this one would be on the quiz, and it will be on the quiz. Okay, it's going to be a short answer. So when you think about these 3 teachings, the first teaching that you really need to understand is that he said you can gain salvation, meaning you can go to heaven, by just having faith alone. We know that the Catholic Church teaches that you need to have both faith, but also do good deeds or good works during your lifetime. So there's kind of a debate in juxtaposition on how you get to heaven between Martin Luther and the Protestant factions and the Catholic Church. The second main teaching of Martin Luther is that all people under the faith are equal. So what he's arguing there is that because everyone's equal under God, you don't need priests to interpret the Bible for you. That's what Martin Luther believed, okay? His third major teaching is, in essence, that all church teaching should really be predicated on the words of the Bible. So he's saying that it needs to be more scripture-based, more New Testament-based in the teachings and the preachings of the church. That's what his real argument was all about. He said that the Pope and other religious leaders really were not as great of authorities as the Bible. That's what he kind of argued. And that's really why the Pope excommunicates him, because he's kind of speaking out against the church and its practices. Next one I want to talk about is Machiavellian ethics. Remember, I taught you about Niccolo Machiavelli, who was a political advisor to many kings and rulers. He wrote The Prince, which was a political guidebook. And he said basically this: hey, if you've got to lie, cheat, steal, murder, whatever it is that you have to do to be an effective ruler politically, then do it. Don't worry about morals and ethics. Only focus on doing what's politically effective. And so Machiavellian ethics today would be doing anything that's crafty, deceitful, lying, cheating on a test. Those are things that would be considered Machiavellian in today's world. All right, next we're going to talk about the effects of the printing press. I kind of already mentioned this when I talked about the printing press earlier, but the effect is that it really increased literacy. It made books cheaper. And I think aside from increasing the amount of literacy and people getting educated from reading those books, I think cultural diffusion, once again, that term that I told you the first week is going to be so evident in all of our chapters. The printing press really spreads ideas, because now you've got religious books being printed. You've got secular books about science and medicine and astronomy being printed. And now your average Joe who learns how to read can then learn about these major ideas. So that's really a big picture change that comes out of course, the printing press. Okay, I've got a couple of charts that I really want to share with you, but in order to do that, I need to share my screen and show you the textbook. You might not be able to see the words on the text, but I want to show you the pages as to where you can find this information. So please follow along with me. The first one that I want to show you is, of course, going to be the chart on page 488. So I'm going to bounce to showing you that screen right there. So hopefully you will be able to see exactly what I am looking at here. And I'm going to go through a couple of the pages too before we get there. So some examples of Renaissance art there. I don't mean that there's the Medici family, a little bit of an excerpt on the Medici family, talking about what a Renaissance man and a Renaissance woman was. Okay, pretty interesting stuff right there. You've got a little bit of perspective when I taught you guys in class about the vanishing point and the horizon line. You've got Michelangelo and Leonardo, two major Renaissance men. There's Niccoli Machiavelli. There's the quote that I read you in class from The Prince. All right, here's some more Renaissance art. There's the Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci. There's the School of Athens by Raphael. Many famous figures in that painting. Then it goes into the Northern Renaissance, which is about how, Renaissance art spread to the north. You got Thomas More, who authored Utopia. Queen Elizabeth, Shakespeare. Here's the printing press and its impact. Talks about, we just talked about that major possibility there. There's a really good one on 484. 485's got bullet points about, hey, what's the big picture thing we want to know about the Renaissance? What are the changes in the arts? How did society change, right? Those are some of the key things that you might want to study. That's page 485. A little bit of life in the Renaissance here, what people ate, how they got around. Your book is great, really. All right, here's the chart on 488 that I'm talking about. Social, political, economic, and then also religious causes of the Reformation. You want to study that chart on 488. Another key chart that I think is really important, I'm going to skip down here, is this one right here about Protestantism. There's going to be a question about many different Protestant denominations. And so what you're going to really need to do is you're going to need to make sure that you know all of those different denominations: Lutheran, Anglican, Episcopalian, Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, Calvinist, Presbyterian. All of those are Protestant denominations that you need to know. Look at this little graph over here. I don't know if you can see it from where you're at, but in our country, okay, now this was back in 2003. It's pretty much the same today. Protestant and independent Christian makes up about 50% of our country as far as religion. Roman Catholic is only 21%. So as far as Christians in our country, the Catholics, we're a Catholic school. We're really kind of a minority in our country. The most people in our country are Protestant in some way, shape, or form. Okay, just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Okay, now we'll bounce back here. I'll go back to the normal look. And I did also show you 491. So that's where we are at there. Okay, just pause here for just a brief moment. Excellent. I see a lot of you are there. I love it. Thank you for joining. Now, very important, AP tips and suggestions. Okay, I've got a couple of things that I definitely want to share with you here on the AP tips. I've got it written down. I want to go over each of those with you. So number one thing on the AP advice that I have for you is this. Please make sure if you have something to write with, go ahead and write this down, okay? Martin Luther will be the prompt for your AP portion MCQ. It's going to be Martin Luther and one of his statements. Okay, it's going to be an excerpt of something that he said publicly about the Catholic Church. So number one thing that you need to focus in on in getting ready for that AP part is Martin Luther. What are his teachings? What are his beliefs? How did he debate? How did he disagree with the Catholic Church? Okay, that would be number one key tip and suggestion in preparing for the AP World part there. I also have questions about short answer style, right? So one of the other things that I want to say is you want to know the role of Renaissance art and how kings and queens utilized Renaissance art. How did they do it? Well, they were patrons and they used Renaissance art and sculpture to glorify their power, to show that they had influence, to show their power and wealth in society. Number three major AP tip and suggestion is to know about the Protestant Reformation, know about those different groups that were created, those different denominations like Presbyterian, Calvinism, Anglican, Baptist, Anabaptist, Methodist. You're going to need to know all of those different denominations. They were talked about in the Unit 3 reading. They were also in that chart that I just showed you on 491. So, that one's going to be kind of having a little bit of duality there for you. Also, the final statement that I have on my list for AP tips and suggestions, the Counter Reformation. Talks about that in the Unit 3 reading, and Section 4 of Chapter 17 also talks about the Counter Reformation. This is really important. This is talking about, hey, how did the Catholics respond to the Protestant Reformation, right? So you're going to want to know some of the ins and outs of things like the Council of Trent. You might want to write that down, which was talked about. There's some bulleted points about the Council of Trent in Section 4. And there's also a lot of key determining factors talked about in the reading from AMSCO on Unit 3 about the Counter Reformation. Okay. So those are some of the things that I really think will be pertinent and helpful for all of you. Okay, I've been talking quite a bit, right? I've gone through kind of my detailed information. I've been going for 27 minutes. So now it's time for something a little bit new. Got a little pause for station identification. I want to hear some words from our sponsors here for just a minute. While you're watching the commercial coming up, I want you to think about some of the questions that you might have. I'll be back in about 1 minute and 12 seconds.
We got a Leaf Gang in progress. Oh, Josh.
My bad.
Why is unknown salsa in the realm? What's going on here?
Hey, you welcome.
Hey girls, so what do we need to do when we come in from being outside in the cold?
We have hot chocolate.
What kind of hot chocolate?
Hot cocoa.
Yeah, not bad. I'm currently enjoying a little cocoa bomb right now, just to make sure I don't get any on my fancy new tie here. A little hint there for you. Okay, so we are back, and what it's time for now, a little bit of question and answer session. So we want to make sure that we are able to understand, hey, what are the key ideas here? So what we're taking a look at are some of the questions. I'm going to make sure that I'm thorough in my answers here. Let's take a look at the first one right here. Let's go to question and answer session. We got, can you talk about Desiderius Erasmus? Of course, Desiderius Erasmus, very popular Christian humanist, talked about, hey, focus your studies on really studying the Bible, and that will lead you to good reform. Don't be so worried about the different rules and the laws. Just be a good person, study the Bible. But he believed in human potential and achievement. So that was a big part of Desiderius Erasmus and his teachings. Okay, any questions, just go ahead and fire away. No doubt I will definitely see them and get to them. I'm working my way down. I hope you enjoyed little shout out to the cocoa bombs. I really enjoyed my cocoa bombs over the break. My daughters really loved them. Their favorite part is when the cocoa bomb explodes and the marshmallows come out. Just awesome. Very, very good job by Sophia. She does a great job. It's still cocoa bomb season, so hey, look it up on Instagram, Cocoa Bomb Shop, and go ahead and make an order. All right, looks like, oh, Sophie is here. Her chat's not working. Hey, if you shoot me a message, I might see it. I can answer your question, or you can filter it through one of your friends, and I'll take care of you. All right, we're working our way down. Ooh, right here. What is the grace? What is the working definition for Protestantism? All right, let me make it simple. Protestantism is basically any Christian faith that does not follow the Catholic Church. So it's Christian, believe in Jesus, believe in God. It's just a separation from the Catholic faith. They don't follow the authority of the Pope. So Protestantism starts with protesting the Catholic Church like Martin Luther was doing. Okay, so Protestantism and protesting of the Catholic Church, that's really where it begins. But really it's the many denominations, okay, that are created from that Protestant Reformation. Yep. Okay, Sophie, I can see your message. Any questions that you have, I'll just keep my phone here, and maybe I'll just kind of flip back and forth to make sure that I can answer your questions. Okay, let's see. We're working our way down. Oop, went too far. Let's see. Who was Donatello? Okay, good. Brett. Donatello was a key Renaissance artist, but mostly focusing on sculpting, right? Sculpting of stone. So his famous work is the statue of David. That was one of his most famous works right there. All right, working our way down. Okay, good question here. Yeah, Nick, there'll be definitely a question like, hey, list 4 key Renaissance artists, right? But then on top of that, you might need to know some particulars, like Leonardo was a painter, a sculptor, a scientist, somebody who was an inventor, right? So things like that categorize them might also be pretty helpful. Yes, I think that would be about the basics, though. You don't really need to know too much outside of that. Okay, how did the ideas of the Renaissance spread to the north, and why did it start in Italy? Ooh, a loaded question there. Good question, Julian. Okay, the answer to this question, the Renaissance spreads north for several factors. Number one, there's an invasion of Italy by the French. And so that invasion basically ends up causing Renaissance artists to move to the north. And then there's the end of the bubonic plague, which causes people to be able to move north, right? And then also there's the end of the 100 Years' War between England and France. So that kind of, when the war is going on between those two, you really want to make sure that you steer clear of that area, because you might get caught in a big war there too. So when that ends, it kind of opens up cities to be repopulated, okay? And the second part of the question, why does the Renaissance start in Italy? There's a couple of key factors. Number one, there were many wealthy merchants that could afford art. And so their being able to afford it meant that a lot of artists were going to flock there because they knew they could sell their products and their works. So that's number one. Number two, remember the Renaissance was a rebirth of art and learning and a return to the classical ways of Greece and Rome. Italy is where Rome is. So the ruins of ancient Rome are right there. And then Greece is just across the sea. So it's very close geographically. So those are some of the major factors as to why the Renaissance begins in Italy, and also talking about why it spread to the north. Okay, I saw that you sent one, but then took it away because I answered it with the other baller. Sign of strength. Okay, here we go. Master Simpson, who got beheaded after the birth of Elizabeth? That would be Anne Boleyn. That's Elizabeth's mother and Henry VIII's second wife. She was his mistress, a very young woman from France. And she was beheaded. Most people say because she didn't supply a son for Henry, but really there were some other factors there. Just to be honest with you, just so you know, historically, one of her children was a stillborn, and that means that didn't survive, but it was also deformed. And back in those days, this is really bad, but I'm going to share it with you. Back in those days, if you had a deformed child, they thought that it was because of inappropriate practices. I think you kind of get what I'm saying. Inappropriate practices that would lead to producing children. And so she, it was really unfortunate for women back then, the way that they were treated. She was like shunned, which that had nothing to do with what happened. But she was shunned by society, and then Henry VIII has her beheaded because he accused her of having extramarital affairs and things of that nature. So that's that type of shaming was going on back then, and that's a really big problem. So that was what happened with Elizabeth's mom, Anne Boleyn. Kirk, I did answer that with Julian's question, so I'm hoping that you got the answer right there. Martin Luther's three main ideas. Again, yes, I can do that. No problem. What you're taking a look at here, number one, you can achieve salvation through faith alone. Number two, you have all people under the faith are equal. And then what we have, number three, is that all teachings of the church should be clearly based on words from the Bible, words from Scripture. Okay, mass gang leader. Ryan, the page, I can't give you the specific page number. I have my book right here. I could look at it. It's definitely in section 3. Okay, it's in section 3. So it'd be like in the mid to 3/4 range of section 3 there. Kirk, what are the two main ideas we need to know for utopia? Really, you need to know the two, basically the two definitions. One is that a utopia is a perfect or ideal place. And then second is that a utopia is no place, because really there isn't officially a perfect place in our world. So that's one of the key things that you want to think about, those two dual definitions there. The Utopia book, Dominic, is basically a book in which he writes about a perfect society, an ideal society where there's no money. So there's a lack of greed, a lack of things of that nature. There's no crime. There's no war. It's just an ideal place. That's really what he was writing about. He believed that if you studied the Bible, that you could create an ideal place like that. We've got a quick question here coming in on Instagram saying, couple of key points we should know about realism. Yeah, that was a bit. Okay, so hold on one second. Realism, everybody. Realism is the second term on your sheet. There were a lot of questions about that today. What you want to think about with realism, it's basically an artistic style that was symbolic of the Renaissance. Okay, realism is basically trying to portray your subject in a realistic fashion. So old school art, like in classical Greece, classical Rome, sometimes they tried to show ideal beauty. During the Renaissance, they really just tried to show, okay, what is realistic? You know, to a certain degree, like some kings like Henry VIII or Francis I, like if you try to show them looking bad, which some of them did look bad in real life, then you might get yourself in trouble. So it's still predicated on realistic portrayals, but you know, there is some, if you're talking about a monarch, sometimes, you know, the artist would try to make them look a little bit better than they would in real life. Okay, Johnny K. The sale, Picture Wars right there. I don't know who that is, but that's a Picture Wars. What is the selling of indulgences? Okay, this is a major thing that led to the Protestant Reformation. The sale of indulgences is basically when you go to confession, you're given a penance, right? And you're supposed to say this many prayers, or you're supposed to do whatever the priest basically tells you. What was going on during this time is you could buy a piece of paper that says you were forgiven from those sins, but also that you didn't have to do the punishment. And you bought it. You paid money for it. So that's the sale of indulgence. That's what really got Martin Luther really mad. And that's when he wrote the 95 Theses and pounded them into the church door at Wittenberg. Explain the difference between a humanist and an individualist. Okay, a humanist is somebody who believes in humanism. So humanism is the movement that studies and believes in the human potential. So what humans can do, what humans are capable of doing, what humans can achieve and what humans have achieved, right? So that's humanism. An individualist would be somebody who focuses on the secular, right? The secular role of the Renaissance, trying to better themselves, kind of making more of a declarative statement on what they can do as an individual, how to make money, how to gather power, influence. So they go hand in hand, Avery. They go hand in hand. But a humanist is focused on what they have achieved and what they can achieve. An individualist is just trying to achieve things. So they go together, but they are also separate in certain ways there. Okay, Alexia is asking about an annulment. Basically, the Catholic Church doesn't allow you to get divorced for any reason. I mean, you have to really go through a process to get a divorce from the church. And what you have to do is you have to get your marriage annulled. So Henry VIII was trying to get his marriage canceled by the Catholic Church, but they denied him, right? So an annulment is to put an official end to a marriage. And basically, the Catholic Church recognizes that your marriage was never really official. That's really one of the major teachings behind an annulment right there. Okay. Okay, John C. About the Renaissance artists at the bottom of the review sheet. Did each of them have a main thing or something? All right, let me look at what you're looking at here. Leonardo da Vinci. Let me go through this with you guys. It seems to be one of the key questions. Leonardo da Vinci, painter, sculptor, inventor, scientist, overall Renaissance man. Donatello, sculptor. Michelangelo, painter, one of the greatest. Sistine Chapel, right? Painter. Raphael, painter. School of Athens, famous work, right? So that would be about all you would really need to know. Okay, Leonardo da Vinci being the great example of a Renaissance man would be probably one that you could focus on a little bit more, but that would be kind of what you would need to know there. Norman says, how many multiple choice questions are there for the content portion? Ooh, I'll tell you the exact answer. I hold in my hands the quiz right here. I've got 24 multiple choice questions on the content. 24 is your official answer. Sophie, I'll get to you. I see it. I'm going to get there. Johnny K. Here you go. Edward will answer your question as well from the Instagram. So can you go over Edward and Mary? Let's go over Edward first, because that one seems to be one that several people have a question about. Edward was the son of Henry VIII. Okay. So Edward is the son of Henry VIII and his third wife, who is Jane Seymour. Now, Jane Seymour died 2 weeks after giving birth to Edward because there was a lot of complications in the birthing process. So Edward was always a sickly young man. He became the actual king at 9 when his dad died, when Henry VIII died. And then by the age of 15, he had passed away. Mary is Henry's firstborn daughter. So Mary is the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, okay, who's Henry's first wife, the lady who was too old to have any more children. So that's why he wants to divorce her and marry a younger wife. So Mary is the daughter of Henry, and she became the queen after her brother Edward, or half-brother Edward, dies. One of the things that she did in England is that she restored Catholicism to England. And a lot of people were against her. A lot of Protestants would not convert to Catholicism. And so she had a lot of people burned at the stake. And that's why they call her Bloody Mary. So that answers several of your questions right there. Julian, concept of the individual. Yeah, that was a key part of the Renaissance, is this idea of, because the world is secular, like, how can I better myself? How can I make more money? The concept of not so much focusing on going to church and being part of the community, just, hey, how can I become more wealthy, more powerful, more influential? Alex, act of supremacy was Henry VIII's oath that he made everyone in England swear to, that he was now the head of the English church, not the Pope. So he starts a Protestant faith, which eventually becomes known as Anglicanism in England. And he separates from the Pope and he makes everyone swear this oath, which is called the act of supremacy. All right, Johnny K wants to know how many official short answers on the content. I got two versions. Version 1 has 4. Version 2 has 5. So 4 or 5, basically, Johnny K. Is there anything not on the review sheet that can be a short answer for the content? I mean, I try to stick to the review sheet, Ashton. Dominic. If I were to do it, it would be probably those bulleted points that I showed you on 484, 485. And so I think it would be like changes that were created by art or changes to society that were caused by the Renaissance. That would be one of the big things that I don't have on the review sheet that maybe could show up. But it's not going to be on there. I know when I wrote the quiz, I didn't put that on there. So there you go. Parker, what's the difference between simony and selling of indulgences? All right, the selling of indulgences is very specific to confession and penance, right? Simony is basically purchasing positions in the church. So it's two different ideas. Selling of indulgences is focused on like getting out of having to pay a penalty for sin, whereas simony is basically paying your way or buying positions in the church, like buying your way into being a priest or buying your way into being a bishop. So you're basically paying money and then gaining a status in the church. So that's really one of the big differences there. And then you got another question, repeat Mary. Okay, Mary is the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine, and she eventually became the Queen of England after her brother Edward passes away at a young age. And she restored Catholicism to England, which caused an uproar by the Protestants. And she had many Protestants burned at the stake, and that's why they call her Bloody Mary by nickname. Okay, looks like those are all of the key questions. Doing great. We're almost at 50 minutes. So hopefully what I was doing has been helpful for you. I want to say a couple of final points of advice here before I answer any more questions. I just want to say, first of all, I'll pull it up on the screen. I want to make sure that I express my gratitude to you. I just want to say thank you again for being such kind and devoted students. The fact that you're here at 9:48 with me studying for my quiz, that makes me feel good. That gives me, a lot of pride in what I'm doing, and it makes me happy that I have students that care that much. So thank you, and I really appreciate all of your efforts, and I definitely want to wish you success on tomorrow's assessment. Remember, though, it's just one quiz. It may be the first of the new semester. It doesn't define you. It doesn't make you any better or any worse of a person. Or it's just an assessment on what you were able to learn and comprehend. So, hey, just give it your best shot. All you can ever do in life is give everything your best effort. If you can do that, you're a champion in my book. Okay. I also want to say, read your notes carefully, right? Read your notes carefully. If you do that, you're going to be successful. Okay. So read your notes carefully, making sure that you're going through those. Read them 1 time, 2 times, 3 times through. Read them in the morning. Guess what? Seminar. Ballers, ballerinas, make use of your seminar, please. Don't goof around there. Don't spaceball. Okay, focus in on the task at hand. If you don't have anything to do in seminar, I can list 18 things that you can do. I can list 40 things that you could be doing, studying for my assessment. So make sure that you get that done. And then finally, hey, thank your parents. Don't forget, say thank you to your parents, making sure that you are expressing your gratitude for all that they do for you. Okay. I am thinking I'm about done with my part. I'll hang on. All right. Thanks, Maya. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, I gotcha. If anybody else has a question, I'll hang on here for a few more minutes. But otherwise, I want to wish you the best, and we'll see you in class tomorrow. Okay. So if you have any other questions or comments, go ahead and throw them in there. If you just want to chat for a minute, I've got a couple of minutes before I watch my favorite show, Below Deck, which is on. My wife recorded that on the DVR, so I'm going to go check that out here in about 5 to 10 minutes. All right. Any other questions or comments? I'm here for you. Anything at all that I can help with. All right. I think in the future I might be able to do like maybe a simulcast. Maybe we can do YouTube Live and Instagram Live at the same time. I haven't tried Instagram Live, but the college football playoffs on tonight. I forgot all about that. I don't know, man. That'll be a tough one for me after doing this. I don't know if I'll be able to pull that one off. We'll see. I don't know if I should even try, but we'll see, Master Josh. You can watch it. Let me know how it goes. All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any other questions. Yeah, I forgot all about that, Josh. Yeah. Who's winning? Show me the score in the comments. Sophie, you don't really have to have anything written down for the definition on those charts. For the Reformation, what you want to write down is basically it's a movement that led to the formation of Christian churches that do not follow the authority of the Pope. Okay, that's basically what the Reformation is. It's basically starts with protesting the Catholic Church. Also, yes, this awesome tie is thanks to Sophie B. Josh, she told me to make sure that you knew that. I don't know why, but there you go. Halftime already in the game. It's Bama up 9-6. Sounds like a great game. Georgia's got a tough defense. I'll tell you that. Is Georgia throwing those small, step screens, not really challenging Alabama vertically, running a little bit of screens and draws? That would be kind of my bet. Then when I watch Georgia, they like the short passing game. They like to try to run the ball, run the clock, rely on their defense. Tell me if I'm wrong. Are they taking shots down the field? Let me know. All right. Well, I am going to head out, and I wish you all a wonderful night. Make sure you get your sleep. Thank your parents. And other than that, thank all of you for joining. Okay. Sounds like they're doing both. So they're throwing short and deep passes. All right, Josh. All right. We'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy, everybody.